Jim Cosmas, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing absolutely perfectly. I couldn't be any better. Southwest Florida, beautiful weather. I mean, how could I complain?
I don't think you can unless there's a hurricane coming, and there isn't one. So
Not yet.
it's not that not yet. It there will be some. It's just not that time of year. The blue collar wave. Let's talk a little bit about that before we get into some things about radio, which I want to talk to you about because you and I both have a radio background. Tell me a little bit about the blue collar wave.
So the Blue Collar Wave is a consulting coaching organization that I founded, own, and operate. And we coach and consult home service businesses predominantly, and those are the HVAC and plumbing, electrical, garage door, roofing, all home service industries. I'm from the industry, so I come from that unique perspective.
Yeah. And I know you love what you do and you bring a lot to your clients because you come from that world. Speaking of coming from a world, you and I also share something in common, and that is a history in radio. And I think kind of a love for radio. Radio is just one of those things that I believe is magical. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that today because one of the things that's frustrating to me is a lot of home service professionals don't fully understand the magic and the power of broadcast radio today. Would you agree a lot of home service professionals, especially ones that are under 50 years old, might say radio isn't what it was? Radio died with my grandfather. I don't understand radio. Everything's digital today, so get with it. Radio's done. Is that an accurate assessment of what we might hear today?
That is 100% accurate.
Mm.
When younger business owners, younger service professionals, and to your point, younger meaning 50 or even less, and you have a lot of great service organizations that are in their 30s and 40s
Mhm.
of the owners. Some of them have never even like it's just not a thing for them. They've
Yeah,
never don't
it's not a
use
thing, yeah.
radio. It's yeah, it's digital, all digital. But I completely agree. That's what's in their mind at this point. That this medium died with,
Yep,
with people older than us.
yeah, and, it's interesting. I'm in the process of writing my book, The Radio Pitchman, and for those of you who don't know what a pitchman is someone who's basically a salesperson. They're pitching a product or service, generally a product, and, I've specialized for decades doing that on the radio, and the tagline is direct response radio, the best kept secret in advertising today. And like I said, Jim, a lot of people believe that radio isn't even used today. Some interesting numbers I'm about to drop on you here, and you may know this. Radio, within the past 18 months, has surpassed TV viewership. So more people listen to the radio than watch traditional television. Number two, there are more hours of radio listened to each and every week versus the time people spend on Facebook. And a lot of people would say, I do not believe that. But I want you to consider this, everybody. If you're driving to work, you commute to work, and you're driving 45 minutes each way, there's an hour and a half. You may listen to a local AM or FM radio station. If you're on your way to church or to the Walmart or the Home Depot, you might listen to it for local traffic, for local talk, weather, and so forth. So when you think about it, it's accessible, it's in everyone's car, and there is no charge to it, and it has that local feel, and that's what people don't get, Jim.
I totally agree, but you also have to consider. I'm not shocked by those numbers, by the way.
Mm,
I think you also have to consider, though, the demographics of those who listen to radio,
yes.
and their income levels and all that. But you do have people that are. I'll give you a for instance. So you have where I live, right, Southwest Florida. Let's call it God's waiting room, in Southwest Florida. And I hear the radio all the time. Neighbors and friends people that are of a certain age, they're listening to the radio for a host of reasons. One is that's how they grew up, and these are the people that now have the expendable income, right? And you have to consider that. That's how they grew up listening to the radio, and they continue to listen to the radio. Not only do they listen to the radio, they're loyal to the radio. They're
Yeah.
loyal to a specific host. They're loyal to the station. They're very loyal. So not only are they listening in their cars on their way to either work or church or to the 7-Eleven or wherever they're going, but they're also listening at home. They're listening at home on a Saturday. They're listening at home while they're hanging out by their pools. They're listening. They're just listening, and I literally hear it.
Absolutely. It's big in your neighborhood because of the demographic. And so let's kind of paint a picture here. People who are our age, 50 plus, kind of being generous too, 50
You- you-
plus
You're being kind.
are familiar with radio because 50 plus individuals grew up with it. And I'm going to be a little harsh because I talked to some great home service professionals in their 30s who are killing it. Multi-million dollar HVAC businesses, plumbing, roofing, and so forth. And they say, I don't listen to the radio, so why would I advertise there? And I say, excuse me? Who cares what you consume as far as media? Are you the 35-year-old HVAC owner, the avatar, the customer you really wanna hit? Or would you wanna hit someone 45 or 50, up to 70 years old in their forever home, who is retired, who has a pension, who has Social Security, and $2.3 million dollars in their 401k, versus the 33-year-old who can barely afford that 4,000 square foot house with no furniture, the Lexus, the Mercedes, and the 3 kids? Who is your target? I would suggest going after the 50 plus person who has money.
Yeah, 100%. And the younger business owner, that younger HVAC owner or plumber or electrician that doesn't listen to the radio, never did. Maybe their dad never did, maybe,
Mm,
or if they did, they weren't sure of it. Um, they didn't. They don't have successful companies because of the same demographic that their inner circle. They don't have successful companies because their customer base is 30 years old, 25, 26 years old.
mm-mm.
They have successful companies because their demographic is that older audience that you just described. My challenge, however, and this is where I see things as far as the consulting world goes. When I work with younger people just like that, and they tell me about the marketing that they do, they can't describe for me who their avatar is. You said that you use the term avatar. They can't describe for me who their true customer is. They
Mhm.
really don't know. But if they sit down and take some time and truly, really iron out who their customer is, not only who there is, who has that income, they're going to find that it's that very person you just described, which is the 50 plus that's got that's got some money.
Yeah, and they're not necessarily in the largest home because many of them have downsized because their children are grown. You know, Jim, it'd be interesting if every home service professional on the invoice, after they did the job, just wrote down in pen what they guessed the age of the homeowner was. 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and then compared that number with the ticket and take all that data. I mean, you could do this all by hand. You could do it within like 3 months. Depends how big your company is, but if you're a smaller one, okay, you could literally do it by hand, and I think you're gonna find the customer that's paying you consistently good money, might not be the highest ticket, but good money, is gonna be of a certain age, and they're going to be trusting. So as people get older, and I'm gonna use this word and it sounds horrible, people become gullible. So I don't know if you know this, Jim, but as we get older, something happens in our brain where we're more trusting. That's why a lot of old people get ripped off by the roofer or by the air conditioning guy, because we hear it about all the time. We see it on the evening news.
Sure,
And
sure.
so the older generation often has money. They're in a paid for house often. It may not be the biggest house. Maybe it's 1,800 square feet, but their air conditioning system needs to be maintained, repaired, and replaced. The roof needs to be repaired and replaced because they're home the majority of the time. They're not working, nor are they on vacation because it's uncomfortable at 70 to go on vacation like it was when they were 40. And they're home. I keep saying they're home. You know what's nice about that? When you're in home service, it's nice when the homeowner is home.
Yeah.
During COVID in home service, it was great because when you were doing the work, the homeowner was there to let you in all the time. They had to be because they weren't allowed on the street. It was against the law in many places in the United States and around the world. So they're home, they have the money, they're in their little castle, and they want it to be cool, they want it to be warm and dry.
You're totally right. And I'm going to give you the opposing view, or at least what you might hear from a younger HVAC owner. They might say, "Yeah, but Jim, the older population, they're living on that. They have a fixed income, Social Security. They can't afford my services." And I'm here to tell you that although there's part of that is true,
Yeah.
that there is that segment of population that simply is on a fixed income, they can't afford high level services. But at the end of the day, they're much more inclined to make a repair without shopping it to death than
Mhm.
the 20 something, 30 something who has no income or very, very little income, who can't afford anything. The other part is, um, when we're talking about this particular generation, the older generation that has listened to radio their entire life, they
Mhm.
trust what's coming out of that radio. And now you're kind of associating yourself with the trust they have with the radio. We just talked about this before we got on a podcast here, Jim, and that was maintenance agreements.
Yes.
That older population, the older generation, is far more inclined to take a maintenance agreement than the younger generation is for a bunch of reasons. The number one reason is they can't do the stuff on their own anymore.
Mm-mm.
Things that they could physically do before, they simply can't do. So their brains think they could do it, but their backs and knees disagree. So they hire other people to do it. So they become a lot more proactive in maintaining their homes and maintaining their roof and maintaining their AC, maintaining their plumbing systems. So they'll take maintenance agreements. They'll also tend to spend a higher average ticket because they
Mhm.
want stuff done right. They don't have time. They don't have. They just don't. They don't. They just want stuff done right. They're not looking for the cheapest way out. Where opposing is the younger crowd,
Mhm.
they have a finite resources. Um, they're not going to do the best, and often it's usually their very first home. Their younger crowd, like their first home. So limited resources, limited. What am I going to put in this high end AC system, or am I going to buy a couch? And feed
Yeah.
my family. The but but as it pertains to radio, though. Um, we have to understand that this older crowd that grew up in the radio, grew up listening to the radio,
Mhm.
trusts everything that's coming out of that station. They're very loyal to it. So when you appear and when people hear you on the radio, and I already trust that station, and I'm that demographic we're talking about, I'm far more inclined to trust you as a contractor.
Absolutely. So, Jim, people will ask me, contractor will ask me, "Okay, if we do direct response radio on your Check a Pro radio show," and let me set this up a bit. My Check a Pro radio show can be aired on any radio station that takes what they call long form block programming, which is an hour of time. We basically lease it from the radio station. I can put that on any station that sells that time, and there's thousands of stations that do. And so when we do that, we're on there and we're part of the station. So a contractor, Jim, will ask, how quickly will the phone ring? I mean, they don't know who we are. I said, "It'll ring that same day that we start." And they're like, "How is that possible, Jim? I've heard it takes 7 to 10 to 12 touches before people respond." This is direct response. It's an infomercial show that is covered up very well by a home improvement cover. So it's a home improvement show with a direct response infomercial flavor to it. You hit the nail on the head, Jim, and it's this: the listener's loyal to the radio station. They don't know that the host, me, Jim Klauck, is not in that studio in Las Vegas, in Chicago, in LA, in Portland, in Houston, in Dallas, in Orlando. They don't know that. I sound like I'm on the station. And then the local contractor, the HVAC guy, the plumber, the roofer, they're my guest. And I'm pumping up that contractor. So all of a sudden, the listener who is loyal to the station is like, okay, I like this contractor, this HVAC guy, because I know, like, and trust him because of the relationship with the radio station. And here's where people's eyes go wide. I ask people, when you need a hammer, where do you go? And they say Home Depot. Then I ask them, are you buying Home Depot or are you buying the hammer? Think about it. Are you buying Home Depot or the hammer? And the answer is Home Depot. It is Home Depot's the brand you've become accustomed to. You're loyal to it. You recognize it. And you know, if you have a problem with the hammer, the nails, the screwdriver, you can go back to Home Depot and they're going to make it better. That's how people feel about their favorite radio station.
Yeah, that's how people feel about their favorite contractor,
Mm,
right? You know, are you buying the air conditioner or are you buying the contractor?
yeah.
Well, same thing. Are you buying a hammer or are you buying Home Depot? Well, if that applies to the contractor, I'm buying the contractor. It applies to Home Depot, I'm buying Home Depot. It certainly applies to the medium. I'm buying radio. I'm loyal to this radio. I understand, like, they're not gonna feed me a bunch of baloney. Like,
Mm,
I'm loyal to I've been listening to it for 30 years kinda thing. So, absolutely, absolutely.
yeah. It's magic. And I'll tell you one of my challenges is, and you know this, Jim, because we've spoken about this before, and that is conveying this message to home service professionals who don't have experience themselves with radio. Because a lot of people will say, I don't advertise on that medium, television, radio, uh, direct mail, or whatever, because I don't consume it myself, right? I don't watch television. I do stuff on my phone or my iPad. I don't listen to the radio. I listen to podcasts and stuff online. Just remember, there's a whole set of people who consume this. So think about all the people in different areas of different industries. So for instance, just because you drive a Ford doesn't mean someone doesn't want to get their Lexus fixed.
Right.
You don't have any experience in a Lexus. You may never drive a Japanese car. That doesn't mean that there's not a business there. How about antique cars? Do you know that some people love to drive a 57 Vet or a 66 Mustang? And guess what? There are people who can refurbish that car. Just because you drive a new car doesn't mean there's not a business there. So you have to just step back and think about it just logically. If radio stations are on the air, okay? And there's companies like McDonald's and Coke and Apple and Verizon and AT&T, not to mention the smaller companies advertising on it. You really think it's a waste of time and money? Come on.
These companies have these companies are billions and billions large, right?
Mhm,
And they can choose to advertise on any medium they want.
mhm.
And they're very, very, very strategic about their marketing dollars. I mean, they measure everything. They have the capability to do that. So when they measure things and realize this doesn't work, they remove it. They don't do it. They're still on radio, aren't they? All of them still on radio. So clearly, they've measured that the effectiveness of the marketing that goes on in that medium.
Yep. I wanna talk about 3 mediums, 3 delivery sources that a lot of people think are old, direct mail, radio, and TV. They're all still alive. So direct mail, some people say, "Why would I send it in the mail when I can do something online?" Here's a good reason, just for that reason. If everyone's thinking that, then the few pieces that do end up in the mailbox,
Yeah.
one of yours, is going to stand out. But everyone still has mail. It is a law. The US Postal Service, which is controlled by the federal government, is not shutting that down, even though there's a loss there every year. I don't know how much we lose, we the people, but a lot. You get mail. Now you might say, "Yeah, but, my credit card statement and my mortgage statement, they all it all gets emailed to me now," but you still get mail. You have a mailbox somewhere, and I'll tell you one thing, people who are 50 plus love to get the mail. Some of these people are retired. They wanna know who sent them something, even if it's from a company. They're conditioned to watch TV and listen to the radio. And I guarantee you, if you ask someone 50, 60, and 70 years old, "Do you enjoy getting mail?" Some might say, "I don't like all the junk mail." So make your mail not junk if you're sending it, okay? Try to personalize it, make it interesting and a good offer. Radio, the same thing. TV. TV's been around for a long time. People still watch it. So I want people who are listening to this, Jim, and watching this to consider this. And I'm challenging you. If you're a home service contractor and you don't believe radio and TV and direct mail are good anymore, we'll start with TV. I want you to watch TV sometime between 6 and 8 a.m. and 5 and 7 p.m. on NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox in your market. And you tell me if there is not one big plumber, one big HVAC guy, one big roofer, maid service, whatever. They're all there, and the biggest ones pay the most money. And sometimes there's 3 or 4 HVAC guys that they'll rotate on the morning shows, like during the Today Show, the evening news, that type of stuff. That's where a lot of eyeballs are. They'll pepper them in throughout the day too, but those are the big times. In radio, they call it drive time, but the news times on TV is a big time. So if radio and TV don't work anymore, then why is your largest HVAC competitor in your town spending thousands, sometimes for 30 seconds? Interesting.
And how did they become the largest? You
By
think from saying,
spending on
the
mass
medium.
media.
Yeah, I think they're saying that medium doesn't work?
Yeah, so that's a good point. If you wanna become the largest and stay the largest, you are going to buy radio and television. I guarantee you this. I'll almost be willing to bet my life savings of $50, okay, that if you go to any major market in the country and you go talk to the largest plumber in that market, HVAC, roofer, so forth, I guarantee you they're on radio and TV.
Yeah, without a doubt. I have a few clients that I work with that are large, and they're not the largest. They're
Mhm.
large.
Sure.
They're on radio and TV. They're on radio and TV.
Yeah.
You hit a point though, and I know you want to talk about the rest, but you talked about direct mail,
Mhm.
TV, and radio, right?
Yeah.
And how maybe a younger business owner just you can't wrap their head around those mediums. Here's what's happened. If we think about over the last few years, especially these last 2 years with AI
Mm.
and how the huge wave of AI, blue collar wave of
Yeah.
AI, right?
Yeah.
Shameless plug. So, if you think about that for a minute, there's a hard, uh, differentiation factor between what's real and what's not.
Mhm.
But people are having a hard time now like, is this AI generated? Was this real? Is that even a real person?
Mm.
Is that Jim Cluck real? Is that really him? That Jim Cluck guy? Is that
May
really
not
him?
be. Yeah.
It could be an AI generated thing. Now, think about that. With all of that happening, the fact that there's so much is AI generated, there's a lack of that person to person feeling you get. And also what's happened is everything has become transactional instead of relational.
Yeah.
What you get with a handwritten letter that
Mhm.
comes in the mail with a stamp on it that somebody like stuck on, that somebody hand wrote,
Mhm.
what you get on TV where you see like a face-to-face image, and what you definitely get on radio where you hear somebody's true gut personality, the real person, you hear that come through. That is it. That's not fake.
Yeah.
That's real. And I think what's happened over the last couple of years, and I think it's going to continue to happen, is we as human beings are going to continue to crave that relational type of relationship where we can have a conversation with somebody, even if it's a monologue like on radio.
Mhm.
We can have a conversation with a real person, not some AI bot.
I agree. I don't know how most people feel about what I'm about to say, but I'll set this up by saying I've been around for a long time and I existed well before the internet did, as you did. It was a simple time. Newspapers, yellow pages, radio, television, word of mouth, billboards. A lot of that's still used today. Yellow pages not much, but everything else is pretty much used today. And so when you heard someone on radio or you saw a newspaper article or you saw someone on TV, television, they were important and they were real. There was no fake. It didn't exist. There was no way to AI stuff and fake stuff. So if someone spoke on the radio, it was always a person. It may have been recorded, but it was always a real person. In radio today, that's still pretty much the case. So when I'm online, I'm looking at things and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's not real. But now I'm questioning almost everything, Jim. You generally don't question, well, some people do question the news, but they still are real people, okay? So
Yeah.
you might not like the liberal or the conservative side of news, but the point is when the broadcaster is talking about a plane crash or an earthquake or a wildfire, that's pretty accurate. When you're on Facebook and you see this video of a wildfire that has taken out the entire state of California and you see a grizzly bear running with its backpack on, you're like, "I don't think that's real." So, my point is people who are older, and I keep talking about the older generation, the ones that have homes paid for, have money, and wanna get it done right, they're not buying this crap. They're afraid of it. They're looking at it like, "I don't believe that all of California burned and there's a grizzly bear running with a backpack." It almost is starting to insult me when I see this stuff. I'm like, "This is just killing me." I just wanna turn the radio on or watch, television where it's real. If I want something fake, I'll watch a sitcom. That's funny stuff. I know it's not like watching Friends from years ago, right? One of my favorite shows was Cheers. These things are done on a set, right? All these TV programs. Watching a movie's not real. It's not unless it's a documentary, and it's still someone's opinion for the most part. But my point is if I want something that's fabricated, I'll probably go online and I'll be entertained by a video, but I don't trust it nearly as much as radio and TV. Then one more thing on this point, Jim, is anyone and their grandmother has access to a soapbox online. Even still today, if you're on the radio or television, you're important. No, like not every radio station or most radio stations won't let anyone on the air. So I bring a radio program to radio stations around the country, but they vet me. Now, luckily, because I've got 40 years experience, it's pretty simple. I talk their lingo and they're like, yeah, 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 I've heard your show. No problem. Let's get you online. Facebook, X, uh, Instagram, YouTube, they don't vet. You just post it. That's a big issue.
There's no vetting process when you're dealing digital media. It's just not. And you can post anything, anywhere, anytime. Fake, real, doesn't matter. Um, but as you said, when you're dealing with this medium, radio and television, especially radio, all of them really, radio and television, you're also dealing with compliance with a government entity, the FCC, right? So you can't say certain things. You can't make boisterous claims that are untrue, proven to be untrue. You can't do these things because there are penalties to pay. Now, you don't have to like it, and you don't have to, political. There's no political motivation behind that statement. It's just fact. So, at the end of the day, Jim, what it comes down to for a contractor, it's truly understanding their avatar, their customer.
Mhm,
Who's gonna spend the greatest amount of money? Who's got the money to spend? Who's more likely to spend it? Who's more likely to want higher quality services?
mm,
Who is that person that you're dealing with as a customer? And then understanding how do they consume their media? Like, where do they get their information from? And they all get on Facebook, and they all get on TikTok and all these other things. But I can tell you, not all of them are on radio and on TV. The ones that
mm,
are the ones that have the money, and those are the 50 plus. That's just straight out fact, 50 plus. Now, the ugly part of this is there's a finite amount of time, right, for that. Because the 25-year-old today, the 30-year-old today, at some point will be 50 and will have never been on the radio, done anything with radio. So to them, it's not important. But today, right as we sit here on today's date, there are millions and millions and millions of people that are 50 plus who grew up listening to the radio, trust their stations, trust what comes out of that radio, and you cannot convince them otherwise. Plain and simple. They don't like AI. They don't want AI. They want nothing to do with it. They don't trust what they see on other mediums, like you said, the grizzly bear with the backpack,
mhm.
right? They look at that and say, "What is real? Like, what is real?" You know what they do? When they turn a dial and it comes on and they hear a familiar voice coming out of that box, that to them is real. So I would implore people, especially younger contractors, get on the radio, man. Just get yourself on the radio. The
Yeah,
other thing that happens, and you just touched on it, it's a huge ego boost, by the way. But the other thing that happens is there's a level of celebrity that comes with that too.
mhm,
When I was doing radio back in the Stone Age, back when you first started too, there was a level of celebrity that came from that. I would go into whatever, a store or something like that, and they'd see a name on my shirt and say, "You're that guy on the radio, right?"
mhm.
It carries a lot of weight, and it still does today. Big time, big time.
Yeah, especially with that demographic, and the demographic, like you said, is a great demographic, economically, financially, 50 plus, and if you're on the radio, in their eyes, still today, but certainly back in the '80s and '90s when you and I were doing stuff on the radio, you were a celebrity. Now, I was talking to someone just yesterday who also he's exactly my age. He was also doing radio back in the day, and he said, "Jim, you know what was something nice about being a radio star? Is that you were still a celebrity, but you could go out in public and people didn't recognize you."
Didn't recognize you.
You know what I mean? So you could go about your business and people didn't stop you everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, when I was a kid, the radio guy, the DJ or an announcer, a talk show host, they were big time. In the eyes of 50 plus, big time. When I go to a home and garden show and people are like, "You're that guy, Check a Pro Joe, Jim Klauck on the radio. I listen to you every week." And, they want to hang out. They want me to sign a book or something because I'm someone that they have gotten to know, like, and trust. And what's really wild about the whole celebrity thing, Jim, is they know you, but you don't know them, right? So if you and I are at a mall and, Tom Cruise walks by, we know him. He's a celebrity. Everybody knows who that guy is. We've probably seen some of his movies and, whether we
Yeah.
believe in his religious stuff or whatever, but we know who he is. And we might even say, "Hey, Tom, how are you?" And he might be nice and say, "I'm fine. How are you?" But he has no idea who we are. He knows, but I bet you he knows that we know him because he's very popular. And the celebrity thing is critical and very important when you are promoting yourself on the radio as a home service professional. Because when you go out to the home, Whether it's you or one of your technicians, they feel that a celebrity who's on the radio is showing up to give the bid, is showing up to repair, to clean, to replace. And that's really, really important. If they see you online, it's not the same thing for that demographic. So all this electronic media has come in fast and furious within the past 5, 10 years. 20 years it started. 20 years ago it started. Younger generations are used to it. It's kinda like, "Yeah, no big deal. I can see people from around the world. I can communicate. It's a two-way deal." Older people's brains don't change.
No.
And so when they were young, the radio star was a big deal. Today, someone on the radio is a big deal. Take advantage of being a celebrity in the eyes of that demographic you really want. Once again, it's the 50 plus who have a paid for house. They're empty nested, most likely. They have money in the bank. They might be getting retirement now. And what's interesting is even though they're not necessarily working or making the income they used to make when they were 40, the 40-year-old has less disposable income. They're
Yeah.
spending it like water. It's
Yeah.
coming in and going out. They're probably in debt. And the retired person has saved money now. They're not in debt. They live in a home that's paid for, that's comfortable. Their kids are grown, and it's a very controlled financial environment for them.
The, um, the retired person, people that are, let's just say in their 60s and plus, right?
Mm,
Um, when it comes to the celebrity thing, you're 100% correct. Like, they view people that they hear coming out of that box as celebrities. But there's another aspect to that. See, all of them are all on Facebook. It was the second largest user group of
yeah.
Facebookers that they're, like, in their 80s, right? So they all know how to use one of these, and they all know how to take a picture of themselves and post it on Facebook. So to them, it's no big deal that they see your face on some digital medium because they can do that themselves. They know how to they post pictures of their
Yep.
grandkids,
Yep.
right? So to them, it's not there's no mystery behind it. But for them, there's big mystery behind this microphone. There's big
Mm,
mystery behind the sounds coming out of the box because they can't do that. It creates a level of celebrity for you,
mhm.
and you should absolutely leverage that. And leverage the trust they have in that celebrity, by the way, and you should absolutely leverage that. Radio is not dead by any stretch of the imagination,
Mm.
and radio is a great place for contractors to get in the minds of people who already trust the station that their words are now coming out of.
Yeah. A handful of years ago, I helped a client who is now a friend. His name is Tom Decker with his attic insulation business. We tripled his business, and it was a small business too. And I don't necessarily suggest a company his size, which was $800,000, move all their chips into radio, but he did. He didn't spend money anywhere else but radio. In Houston, Texas, we were on 6 to 8 hours a week. We tripled his top line from 800,000 to over $3 million, and he wrote a book on it called When Can You Do It? And what's interesting about that book title is that's what you want your homeowner, your prospect to ask when you come to the house. It's the only question. When can you do it? Versus how much does it cost? How long will it take? Do you have insurance? Is there a warranty? All that has been answered on the radio in a long form radio program. Tom comes to the house, or one of his team members comes to the house. They're celebrities. All the questions have been answered already on the direct response radio program. And the only question is, when can you do it? You
Yeah.
know, Jim, it's like an infomercial. We've all watched infomercials on TV. Maybe we can't sleep. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. The TV goes on, and you see that blender or the Thigh Master, okay? Some kind of exercise equipment. And you're watching it for 45 minutes. And they're telling you what it does, where it's produced, who invented it, the results you'll get, and only 4 easy payments of $59.95. Call now.
Screaming deal. Screaming deal.
Yeah,
Right.
okay? And there's only 8,000 left, so you better call now. So you call, and you're not asking questions like, "Where was it made? What's the warranty?" All that stuff has already been covered. All you're asking is, "Are you ready to take my credit card? And how long will it take to get here? Oh, can I expedite that?" The shipping, I mean. Wow, that's it. So how many contractors are going out to the house half-baked? How many times have you gone out to the house and you found out that that prospect is not your customer? Oh, you can't afford it. Oh, um, you don't like our offering. Well, no, you don't supply what I thought you did. Okay. So we do our best, right? Uh, on a CSR side, maybe, salesperson side, talking to the customer before we go out. But I'm telling you, when you have an hour in a long form radio program to get to know, like, and trust, or have them get to know, like, and trust you, educate them, and then you're a celebrity on top of that, it isn't a lead that you get when your phone rings, Jim. It's an appointment. And that appointment is the responsibility of your team members, your salespeople, to close. And if you have a great closer, you're in the house. It's easy.
Yeah. Yeah. We talk about call booking rate all the time, right? The phone
Mhm,
rings. How many of those calls you're actually getting to? But the key difference here, and I don't think you're doing it justice. And the key difference here is that just because your phone rings because they found you online or they found you on the internet or they found you somewhere else in another medium and
mhm,
your phone rings, you have to sell your way into the house at that point. When they hear you on the radio, there's no it's just, "Okay, when do you want it? Let's book the appointment." It's done, it's sold. They're not calling you if they hear you on the radio to get more information. They're
mhm,
calling you if they hear you on the radio to ask you, "When can you get here?" Like, when can you get here today, tomorrow?" They're calling you now because they have a need for whatever it is that you're talking about on the radio now. There's
yep,
no there's no explanation necessary. Huge, huge. So when we talk about cost per lead and you
mm,
think about what it costs per lead to do it digitally, which today has gone insane, over a couple $100, $300,
yep,
compared to what it costs for lead when you get a radio lead like that and the value of that lead. If a lot of people take a cost per lead, but they don't take into consideration those that they don't book. Now all of a sudden your lead costs are exponentially higher. But when you listen to something on radio, you get a lead from a radio
mhm,
and they call you from the radio, lead is booked. Just book it. It's done. It's done.
yeah, and it's not a lead, it's an appointment. There's a
It's an
difference.
appointment. It's a
There's a
appointment
difference.
by somebody that already believes they know you.
They already know you, and here's something else that really is, I believe, the cherry on top. When someone is listening to you on the radio, let's say you're a plumber and you are, as part of what you sell water treatment, water softeners, reverse osmosis, and you're educating, or we're educating the listener. And we say, Acme Water Treatment will come out and give you a free water test. If you end up buying a water softener, you'll get a free reverse osmosis drinking water system and a free aerosol, which, by the way, actually does work for these companies, believe it or not. And so you're telling the listener this, and you're telling them why they need it, Jim. In other words, have you noticed water spots, that hard water on your shower doors? Do you replace your dishwasher on a regular basis? Do you hear banging and clanking in your water heater, your tank? And they're driving around saying, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." You know what you've just done, Jim? You've created demand. They were not in the market for it. So when you get a Google lead, they came up with the idea that they may need a water softener and or reverse osmosis drinking water system. The difference is they were driving around. You interrupted them. It's called interrupted radio or advertising. It's in a radio show format. You're educating them, also called, um, um, edutainment or infotainment. Okay, so you're educating them in edutainment, and they've made a decision now that they really need to consider getting their water tested and probably getting a water softener because they didn't know that could be the solution to their appliances lasting longer and not having to clean the shower doors as much. They weren't gonna call you. And I'll tell you something else. Not only weren't they gonna call you because they didn't know they needed it, like the blender or the ThighMaster, when they do call you, they're not calling anyone else. You were the only one because 'cause you're the one who's solving their problem. They're not calling your competition
You're the one who solved them a problem they didn't even know they didn't realize they had
or how to
until you
solve it.
brought it.
Yeah.
Yeah, or how to solve it.
Mhm.
You know what a dynamic, a paradigm shift is?
Yeah.
When somebody believes something and then they find out information and now believe something else, except
Mhm.
the information they weren't looking for the information that they found,
Yep.
they got some information that they weren't necessarily looking for. Now all of a sudden that aha moment came, "Oh, that's why I should call. That's why my dishwasher keeps dying every 3 years. I should call. That's why I my hair feels like like it's sandpaper. I should call."
Yeah.
Right? So it's just finding out information, and I really love radio, and I'm passionate about radio, always have been, still am, and that's because you create such a visualization from words and sounds.
Mm.
People aren't seeing you. It's a different machine, and people aren't seeing you, so we call it theater of the mind, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're creating this image for people that allows them to to have this imagery of how they're going to feel after this thing is done,
Mhm.
what's going to happen later, and how good they'll feel as a result of it. Very powerful.
It it is. It's powerful, it's magical, and it works over and over and over and over again. And if, once again, you're scratching your head saying, "I don't understand how radio works. I don't understand even how television works. Everything's online." It's like we've been brainwashed. Um, just because we can use a device like a computer or an iPad or a phone to write messages doesn't mean that these don't exist. And that might not be a great example or comparison, but a lot of people say, I don't need a pen. That's not true. I guarantee you, you need a pen. I guarantee you, you do. But you could actually probably get away without it. So, yes, you can put all your marketing dollars and advertising dollars into digital. And by the way, I sell digital. You can do podcasts with me. Same thing as the online radio show, but or the broadcast radio show, but it's an online radio show, and we'll put it on your social media, and we have SEO components and backlinks and so forth back to your website, and we do a full color deal online, which is great. It's an option, but the internet is an endless galaxy. There's no definition. So how is someone gonna find you? They find you on radio because they bump into you because they're listening to their favorite radio station. How do they find your hammer at Home Depot? They're shopping their favorite store. If you're selling a consumable product, wouldn't you love to be in a Walmart store? Hmm. Yeah, because they have the traffic. Now, the internet has traffic, but how are they gonna find you? Hmm.
Uh, here's the internet has traffic, but it's traffic from all over the world.
Mhm.
Right? And I know, listen, you can get on the internet and you can really kind of, geo-target stuff and you can do all that kind of stuff and get your ad out to so many people and so many things, but it's still messy and it's still very noisy. It's very cluttered, very, very cluttered. In
Mm.
fact, it's gotten more every day is getting more cluttered, especially with AI. Think about the radio for a moment. It's local, truly local.
Mhm.
It's like in a city or a couple of cities, and it's just it's really local. It's not broadcasting nationally somewhere,
Mm. It has
so
a broadcast radius, literal,
yeah,
geographic.
exactly.
Mhm.
Geographic, so it is broadcasting in your neighborhood, in the very neighborhood that you service. So, it's powerful medium. That's why people trust it because it's their own backyard, it's their own voice.
And it's
People from
lit
their
yeah,
neighborhoods.
And Jim, is limited. The
Yeah.
AM band and the FM, a lot of people don't know what AM and FM means. Amplitude modulation and frequency modulation, 2 totally different sets of frequencies. But there's only so much room on each band, okay, on AM and FM. So in any given market, there's only so many radio stations and only 24 hours in a day. So a radio station can actually go to bed at night saying, "We have maxed out our inventory." So they have an end. But Facebook will say, "We can sell more time on Facebook." It's endless, right? Radio's not. The good thing about it having a defined amount is that you don't get lost. Because if people are listening to the radio, they're bouncing off each side of that band and they're gonna hit you at some point. One downside to radio is that sometimes when we're looking for a place to put a client's program, the 1-hour show that we do, there isn't time because it's limited, which is kind of a good thing because when you do get a slot, you're gonna be heard. Have you ever heard Google won't take your money? Come on.
Yeah. No,
Facebook won't take your money? Hmm.
it's never
Really?
gonna happen.
Because they'll just make more space. I think all this digital is gonna come home to roost. There's gonna be some kind of meltdown, consolidation. Because it's not gonna work because people are spending all their marketing money, their advertising, promotional money,
Yeah.
and I mean, you hear it now with Google. People say, "Google's not what it was. I'm not getting my return. How am I gonna, get more clients, more customers?"
Jim, it's a noisy space. It's a noisy space. The digital space is a very, very noisy space. Everyone's vying for everyone's attention, like, period. So you're getting bombarded all day long, and nothing is that extraordinarily important to anyone at that point on digital space, unless you're doing some really, really wacky stuff, and that's not what sells your product or service. What's old is new again, though, and it's being driven by AI. I'm telling you, being driven a lot by AI and the human need to communicate with another human being, that innate human need to be able to communicate with another human being. So
Mhm.
what's old is new again. Direct mail, handwrite stuff. If you do nothing else, handwrite some stuff and send it to people. TV, face to face. There you go. Not exactly face to face. There you go. Radio, ear to ear, like
Yep.
people hear your voice.
Mhm.
That medium is absolutely I'm gonna use the term resurgence. It may not be accurate, but there's a medium there in the radio that
Yeah.
is definitely there for people to take advantage of.
Yeah, I will concede that radio has lost some ground over the past 3 decades. So there's been a decline in listenership because there's options, all right? You can listen to, Spotify, Audible, a whole bunch of podcasts online, right? So you can get information on your handheld device or through satellite radio. Satellite radio, was a huge disruptor to traditional terrestrial broadcast radio. So I've seen it decline a bit, but it's not continuing to go down. It's like when a car depreciates. Brand new $50,000 car loses 5, 8,000 as soon as you drive it off the lot. 2 years later, it's worth 28,000. At some point, it just doesn't drop a lot because it's got 4 wheels, a steering wheel, and it goes. So it's got a value of 18,000 or whatever, and it'll hold
Unless it becomes a classic, and then it's worth a
and it
lot
goes
more
up.
than the beginning.
Exactly. Radio has dropped and is leveling out. Now I
Can
will
I tell
say.
you my theory? I
Yeah,
don't want to cut you off.
sure.
My theory on why I think radio has declined. In that in how you describe.
Mhm.
Yes, there's a lot more there are other options, right? People tend to listen to other things, but it's also an age demographic, which brings us back to what we originally started saying.
Yeah.
See, the younger audiences adopted other mediums, and they're listening to the Spotifys, and they're listening to the podcasts, and they're listening to all well, TV happened the same with TV, right? It's the younger audiences aren't tuning into the TV. So if you're a contractor and you think the younger audience is your customer,
Yeah.
then don't get on TV and radio because that's not where they live. But they don't have any money either.
Yeah. You're
So
right,
understand
100% right.
Yeah, so understand that, yeah, there's been a decline in radio, there's been a decline in TV, and that's because younger audiences are moving to other mediums. Take advantage of the audiences that are on the radio and TV now, because those are the ones that have the money, and those are the ones that are very loyal to those stations.
You're absolutely correct. And I don't believe radio and television are going to drop off like the yellow pages did. I just don't think so, or even as much as newspapers have, and newspapers aren't dead, but they're pretty sick, but they're not
Yeah,
dead. I mean, the New York Times still exists, and of course, they have a digital version and so forth, and if it makes you feel better, everybody, when we do a radio program in your market under the Checker Pro brand where I'm interviewing you as the contractor and the homeowner knows, likes, and trusts you, and they love the station and they call you for an appointment, it's also going out on Audible and Spotify and Amazon and iHeartRadio. And so YouTube, we're putting it out on Facebook, on social media. So that same show is also going out on digital, but the biggest value is the broadcast.
yeah. So you kinda get a mix of all of it, but the biggest value is the broadcast, absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, this has been awesome. I could talk forever with you, Jim.
Yeah, man, this is cool. I like talking radio. Just to hear a shameless plug, go get my book, W Home Service Profits, without spending a dollar more on marketing. Oh, look, Jim's got one too.
I've got one. Absolutely. Thank you for sending it to me, by the way. I appreciate it. Yeah, you should get the book. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it, my friend. Let's do this again soon.
Good to see you, bud.